Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at something both shocking and deeply unsettling. What if the most dangerous war in the world isn't being fought on the front lines, but is actually being directed from quiet suburbs and military offices in your own country? You may not know this, but facts show that Germany, a nation that hasn't officially declared war, is now playing a far more active role in the Ukraine conflict than anyone publicly admits. And the most disturbing part? This role includes facilitating attacks on Russian territory, possibly bringing Germany dangerously close to becoming a primary target itself. It started with a whisper, a casual comment by German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, "We are at war with Russia." At first, most shrugged it off as a slip-up, a rookie blunder in diplomacy. But now, with the revelations published by the New York Times, that offhand remark seems less like a gaffe and more like a hidden truth finally slipping through. The newspaper, known for its rigor, laid out a series of findings that point to something explosive. Germany, through US military bases on its soil, may be indirectly coordinating critical parts of the Ukraine war. Here's the twist. Those bases aren't just for training or logistics. From the Lucius D. Clay Kaserne in Wiesbaden, secret intelligence is relayed directly to Ukrainian forces. This includes not just troop movements, but high-stakes battlefield decisions. Imagine this, a Ukrainian officer receiving a secure message, timed to the minute, about when to launch a drone or fire a missile. That message might have originated in an office less than an hour from Frankfurt. Still feel like the war is over there? Or is it right under our noses? How does it feel knowing these decisions could be made just miles from your home? But it gets more intense. One such directive might have contributed to the deadly missile attack on a Russian military dormitory on New Year's Eve 2023. Hundreds of soldiers were killed, many while sending innocent holiday greetings to loved ones. Ukrainian sources say the attack was precise, suggesting that external, possibly Western intelligence tipped the scale. And when the data trail was traced, guess where it may have led? Right back to Germany. You might be wondering, could the Russians know this too? And if so, wouldn't that make German territory a legitimate military target in their eyes? That's the question intelligence experts are asking. Because if strikes launched by Ukraine are being enabled by information routed through German-based systems, doesn't that make the sender complicit? What would happen if Russia decided to retaliate? Not against Kiev, but against Wiesbaden? Now enter the Americans. You might think their presence in Germany is about safeguarding democracy or deterring aggression. But former CIA and Pentagon officials interviewed by the New York Times revealed that US strategy has evolved. Germany isn't just a hosting ground, it's a nerve center. From here, surveillance data is collected, encrypted, and forwarded. Some believe that even targeting coordinates for HIMARS rocket systems are finalized in Germany before reaching the front lines. The public debate is still ongoing. Is this protection or provocation? A growing number of Germans are beginning to ask whether their nation's quiet role has put them directly in the crosshairs of a foreign war. And this brings us to a crucial dilemma. If a country hosts intelligence operations that result in enemy casualties, is it still neutral? What if Germany is already part of the war and no one told its people? As this reality sinks in, the political silence becomes deafening. No major German leader has addressed these operations publicly. No warnings have been issued. No debates held in parliament. It's as if this war is happening in another dimension. Yet the servers hum quietly in Wiesbaden, the satellite dishes rotate gently toward the east, and life outside the base moves on, completely unaware. This is no longer about whether you support one side or another. It's about transparency, accountability, and danger. Germany isn't just delivering tanks, it may be delivering war plans. And those plans are being executed with German airspace, German infrastructure, and German complacency. That should frighten all of us. Would you feel safe knowing a war is being fought, planned, and directed right from your backyard? It always starts the same way, a far-off war framed in black and white, one side the hero, the other a villain. But what if the lines aren't that clear? What if the real game is being played far from the battlefield, by powerful nations pulling strings from secure rooms while others bleed in the mud? That's exactly what's happening, according to a detailed investigation by the New York Times. And at the center of this modern puppet show is the United States, directing moves through Germany in a war they claim not to be fighting. The story goes deeper than geopolitics. It's about the quiet machinery of empire, of power that's never voted on, never named, never blamed. Ukraine, in this scenario, becomes less a sovereign nation and more a proxy, a glove on the hand of a much larger force. Journalist Adam Antus interviewed more than 300 insiders for the New York Times report. His conclusion? This is a US-Russia war masked as a regional conflict. The evidence? Command and control structures, intelligence flows, targeting data, all initiated from Western command centers. Here's the twist that should shake anyone with a memory of history. This is Vietnam all over again, or Afghanistan, or Syria. In each of those conflicts, local actors fought on the ground while major powers played a high-stakes chess match from afar. The US, always far from the actual front lines, has perfected the art of remote warfare. And now Europe is the chessboard. And Germany? Germany is the Queen's square. And just like in every proxy war, it's the soldiers who pay the price. Let's return to the New Year's Eve tragedy in Donetsk. Around 400 Russian soldiers were killed, according to Ukrainian sources, when a missile strike leveled their temporary base. Russian sources claim the number is 89, but even that lower number is horrific. These weren't just fighters, they were sons, brothers, young men who, that night, broke protocol to send one last text to their families. One last Happy New Year. Those mobile signals, ordinary, human, tragic, may have been picked up by surveillance systems, traced, and turned into kill zones. It's a gut-wrenching image, a boy typing "Love you, Mom" just seconds before a missile obliterates the building. And while Ukrainians see the strike as a necessary blow in a war for survival, one must ask, who provided the coordinates? Who decrypted those text messages? Was it a satellite in orbit? A drone? Or perhaps a quietly humming terminal in a Wiesbaden command bunker? What does it mean when human connection, texts, photos, calls, becomes the very trigger for death? The debate rages on. Critics of the West's role in Ukraine argue that this strategy makes the US and its allies not protectors, but puppeteers. Supporters claim it's the only way to level the playing field against a military giant like Russia. But even within American circles, dissent grows. Former intelligence officials admit, off the record, that the line between support and participation is now completely blurred. The German public, meanwhile, is largely in the dark. When asked, officials use vague language: strategic partnership, defensive coordination, logistical support. But behind closed doors, there are internal memos, encrypted briefings, and surveillance algorithms mapping every inch of the Eastern Front, all from German soil. Let's look at one more eerie layer, the Ramstein Air Base. Ostensibly a logistics and refueling center, this US stronghold has long been suspected of hosting more than transport planes. Whistleblowers have hinted at its role in drone warfare, suggesting that decisions about life and death in the Middle East, and now Ukraine, may be made from here. If true, that makes Germany more than a host. It makes it a battlefield without the smoke and rubble. How many of us walk past these places every day without knowing what's really happening behind the fences? Now consider the parallels to the past. During the Cold War, Germany was the epicenter of global tension. US and Soviet tanks once faced off in Berlin, just meters apart. Back then, the threat was visible, concrete, undeniable. Today, it's silent, digital, and perhaps even more dangerous. Because you don't see satellite data, you don't hear encrypted signals, and you certainly don't feel the moral weight of triggering an attack with a keyboard. And yet, the consequences are the same. Blood is spilled, cities burn, people grieve. The only difference? The real decision makers are often hundreds or thousands of miles away, like chess grandmasters who never touch the board. So here's the ultimate question. If Germany is providing the eyes, the ears, and the brain for Ukraine's war machine, but not the hands, is it still fighting? How do we define war in an age when a base in Wiesbaden can launch a chain of events that ends in a crater in Donetsk? These are the questions that must be asked, especially now as tensions rise and the risks escalate. Because this war isn't staying over there. It's already inside our networks, inside our politics, inside our homes. And the next move may not be as silent. There's a moment in every great crisis when things almost slip beyond the point of no return. For the Ukraine war, that moment came quietly, almost invisibly, hidden in the kind of classified report that rarely sees daylight. According to the New York Times, during the first year of the war, Russia came within inches of doing the unthinkable, launching a tactical nuclear strike. The trigger? A near collapse of its supply lines, orchestrated with pinpoint precision, thanks in part to intelligence relayed from Western sources. And at the core of this deadly chain of communication? Germany. The danger wasn't theoretical. US intelligence had previously assessed the chances of a Russian nuclear strike at around 5 to 10%, but as Ukrainian forces advanced toward the Dnipro River, threatening to sever Russia's key logistics routes, that estimate was revised sharply upward. Internal US sources cited by the Times say the number reached a staggering 50-half. A coin toss. That's how close we came to a nuclear escalation that could have changed the world. The twist? The Russian field commander in charge of Ukraine at that time didn't just suggest the use of tactical nukes, he demanded it. The Kremlin hesitated, but insiders believed that hesitation was razor-thin. Moscow was militarily cornered, publicly humiliated, and under immense pressure to restore dominance. All it would have taken was one nod from Putin. And boom! History's next Chernobyl, but this time deliberate. Would you sleep the same way, knowing how close we came to that level of annihilation? And here's what makes it worse. The intelligence that enabled the Ukrainian advance, surveillance footage, satellite positioning, intercepted radio frequencies, was reportedly filtered through US and NATO systems. Where are those systems housed? One of the primary nodes, the Lucius D. Clay Kaserne in Wiesbaden, Germany. From here, raw data was processed, interpreted, and funneled straight into battlefield strategies. Let that sink in. Germany, once the divided ground zero of Cold War tension, is again at the center of a global nuclear gamble, without a single shot being fired on its land. The wires hum, the screens glow, the codes zip through fiber lines, and somewhere, a commander decides when to strike. This is modern warfare, invisible, networked, lethal. And if that nuclear option had been taken, where would the first retaliatory strike go? Kiev? Warsaw? Or perhaps Wiesbaden itself? Germany's involvement, whether complicit or convenient, changes the stakes for every citizen. Not because we chose this war, but because war has a way of choosing those who enable it. And make no mistake, strategists know this. Putin's government has repeatedly warned of consequences for nations facilitating attacks on Russian soil. That includes intelligence providers. That includes airspace grants. That includes cyber access. That includes... So why hasn't there been a louder public conversation? Why do politicians remain mute, tiptoeing through a fog of euphemisms while the world plays with nuclear fire? One reason, plausible deniability. As long as Germany doesn't officially direct combat operations, it can pretend neutrality. But the New York Times blew that illusion wide open. Their investigation confirms what many suspected. The command structure for several Ukrainian offensives included real-time data and decision support from US military centers in Germany. In one case, soldiers were instructed when and where to break Russian lines, timed to maximize psychological and strategic damage. The success of that move pushed Russian forces to the brink, and their commanders to madness. What would happen if this becomes a pattern? What if every Russian military setback leads to another nuclear debate in the Kremlin? Already, military analysts are recalculating the odds. No longer is the question, will Russia use nuclear weapons? Now it's, what exactly would force their hand? And every time Western-backed offensives push too close to Crimea or Russian heartland infrastructure, we dance again on the edge of the abyss. Meanwhile, Germany's role deepens. Troop deployments, satellite tracking, command logistics, cybersecurity, electronic warfare support, it's all coordinated through NATO frameworks deeply rooted in German soil. The infrastructure is here, the servers are here, the antennas and launch systems are here. We are no longer an observer. We are a platform. And yet, the political discourse remains oddly pacified. No emergency sessions, no citizen referendums, no deep national debate about the ethics or risks of being NATO's main operating system for a high-voltage conflict. It's a democracy gone mute. Why aren't we screaming? To make things worse, public trust in global diplomacy continues to erode. The idea that diplomacy failed catastrophically before this war began haunts every analyst. The NATO expansion eastward, the rejection of Russian demands for non-alignment guarantees, the weaponization of economic leverage, each piece of the puzzle added tension until the inevitable snapped. Even Mikhail Gorbachev, the man who opened Russia to peace, admitted late in life that No Kremlin leader could tolerate such pressure forever. So here we are, caught in the fallout of geopolitical stubbornness, bearing the costs of choices made decades ago. But the scariest part? We still haven't learned. The war grinds on, the blood continues to flow, and rather than seek a radical peace, governments opt for more weapons, more data, more coordination, more risk. So let's end on this final, chilling thought. If the next missile launched by Ukraine hits a target too deep inside Russia and Moscow sees it as a direct NATO-enabled attack, what will stop them from retaliating not against Kyiv, but against Germany? What will we do if the next war isn't on our screens, but in our skies? As we've seen across these 3 chapters, the war in Ukraine is not just a conflict between neighboring states, it's become a global chess game, and Germany, whether knowingly or not, is playing centerboard. From secret data hubs in Wiesbaden to strategic decisions informed by Western intelligence, the illusion of neutrality collapses under scrutiny. What was once a local war is now deeply enmeshed in German infrastructure, politics, and perhaps most dangerously, its geography. The horrifying brush with nuclear war reveals just how fragile peace has become. In an age of digital combat and proxy politics, the distance between participation and provocation has vanished. What's needed now isn't more coordination, but confrontation with truth, through public debate, transparent leadership, and a deep commitment to diplomacy. It's time to pull back from the edge and demand clarity. For if we are indeed part of this war, we must face its consequences fully, or demand a new path forward while we still can.